In this episode,
On a good day in the summer, I can power the entire street.
I could write myself an app that's much better than the Mitsubishi one, I think, in about a day.
We look at type of use rather than time of use.
The next question is, do we then let it drop down for the day because nobody's home?
Go intelligent flux. Bloody hell, man.
Gas just doesn't make sense anymore.
There is still hope.
hi and welcome to another episode of Homeowners Q&A. I'm your host Mars, and today we're diving into a topic that's top of mind for homeowners following OFGEM's latest price cap announcement. How should heat pumps influence your energy tariff choices? Joining me today are Laurence Bradbury from OFGEM Energy, Ben Watts from kilowatts.io, Peter Toth from PBT Installations, and Chris Watling from OVO. Welcome everybody. Before we get started, we'd like to thank OFGEM Energy for sponsoring this episode. With over 13 years of experience in the renewable energy market, OFGEM has been a pioneer in delivering cutting-edge solar PV and energy storage solutions. As certified premium partners of Tesla and SolarWatt, they specialize in designing bespoke renewable energy systems that not only reduce energy costs, but also provide exceptionally low-cost energy. OFGEM Energy's commitment to quality, innovation, and customer support is unmatched. From ground-mounted systems to in-roof installations, their expert team ensures every project meets the highest standards, backed by comprehensive insurance and dedicated energy consultants. Thank you, OFGEM Energy, for supporting our mission to explore sustainable energy solutions and for helping homeowners and businesses in the UK transition to a greener future. Right, Ben, so with OFGEM's latest price cap announcement, obviously we've seen both electricity and gas go up again, and I think that the actual price gap between the two has remained the same. But ultimately, what does that mean for homeowners that have got heat pumps that are concerned about prices in electricity going up again?
The bigger increase for electricity for people who are actually on the price cap tariffs, which is not going to be everyone, but for those who is actually the standing charge, and there's not much you can do about that. The other thing about this announcement is that it's just for the next 3 months, so up until July. For most people, we're coming out of winter, they're not going to be using their heat pump that much, at least from the start of April when this all kicks in. If you're on a heat pump and you're kind of engaged with energy, it's always a good idea to pick your tariff actively rather than sitting around on the price cap. So I think it'd be good in this call if we threw around ideas for what people's favourite tariffs are that are out there at the moment. I've got some ideas and I'm sure other people on the call will as well.
When we talk about heat pumps, there's a lot of people that will talk about the spark gap. So could you just explain to people exactly what that spark gap is and why it exists and why it's a concern for homeowners?
The spark gap is the ratio between the retail price of electricity, the retail price of gas. The term comes from spark spread, which is kind of a similar concept, but it's more about like the kind of profit margin of a gas power station, which when you think about it is like a similar kind of thing. The problem in the UK is that electricity is a lot more expensive than gas, like by a factor of like kind of 3 or 4. At least on the kind of headline kind of rates that we talk about with the price cap. And that's a challenge for heat pumps because it means they have to be, relatively efficient and well installed, which they should be anyway, but they have to be pretty efficient in order to have a cheaper running cost than a gas boiler. Now, in reality, and we can hopefully get into this with everyone else, like there are quite a lot of tariffs out there that can reduce the price you pay for electricity quite significantly below those kind of headline price cap rates, at which point the heat pump can be significantly cheaper to run than a gas boiler or an oil boiler, LPG, whatever.
So Laurence, you've always been very outspoken and very vocal about using time of use tariffs on every episode that you've come onto. What tariff are you on? And what do you typically advise to your clients when it comes to tariffs?
It's very, very interesting. I mean, I'm on an Intelligent Go. To answer your question, I have an EV, which is, as far as I know, the second cheapest tariff out there. So that's 7 pence per kilowatt from 11:30 in the evening until 5:30 in the morning. And I think E.ON do an EV tariff, which is 6.9p. So E.ON have a slight edge on that, but I really can't be bothered to shift for 0.1 of a penny. So yeah, if you do the price comparison, I might save 100 quid. And the reason I'm on that tariff is A, because I have an EV, but B, also I've got 3-phase and quite a lot of energy storage. So I just took the view that, I mean, time of use tariffs, how long are they going to be around? We don't know. As more and more people get batteries, I suspect the the off-peak tariffs will change somewhat and be a bit more dynamic. Yeah, my view is I want to fill up. I want enough storage to run my house for the day. My house uses about 50 kilowatt hours per day without charging the car. But it's typical for me to use 100 to 150 kilowatts a day, especially today. I've just rocked up with 6% left in my car, so I'm going to use 90 kilowatts to charge that tonight. So I'm on Intelligent Go, but there are specific tariffs out there for heat pumps. The last one that we spoke about was Octopus Cozy, which is really good because it means you don't need huge amounts of storage. It means you just cycle the battery 3 times in a 24-hour period, and it's 12 pence a kilowatt, which is quite competitive.
What about you, Pete? Do you have a favored tariff?
I'm on the same as Laurence. I'm on Intelligent Octopus Go, and the reason behind that is I've got 2 EVs, heat pump, and the whole house is run on electricity. I've got my own batteries and a couple of solar arrays, and it's actually the best one I can put my finger on at the moment, and it certainly works the way I intended it to work. But it's got to be right for the homeowner. It's got to be the right installation with the right amount of electricity consumed to make it that favorable. Before we even talk about the tariff, it's got to be the right heat pump installation as well, and making sure that the heat pump isn't just running for the sake of running it.
What tariff are you on, Ben?
I've got the E.ON one that Laurence mentioned. I think the main advantage of it actually is that it's cheap all the way through till 7 a.m. in the morning, whereas I think the Octopus one finishes a lot earlier. And that's important because the busiest time of day for your heat pump is 4 a.m. till 8 a.m. because you're going to probably let the temperature drop a little bit overnight. And then first thing in the morning, it's really cold outside and you've got to warm your house up. So having some cheap power, like in that period, makes quite a big difference, even if you've got a battery, or particularly if you've got a battery, actually. I did have a look at the market just before this call, and the other one that I'd shout out, no one's mentioned, which I thought was quite good, was the Good Energy one, which doesn't require you to have an EV. The other ones we've just spoken about are EV tariffs, first and foremost. But the Good Energy one got you 10 pence off peak for kind of 2 periods in the day, one in the early morning and one in the afternoon, I think. We should ask Chris to talk about the OVO tariff, which is quite a clever one as well.
I would assume that you're on Heat Pump Plus.
Yes, yeah. As the lead for our heat area of OVO, I think it'd be wrong of me not to. So we look at type of use rather than time of use. Just gives us a bit more flexibility with the different add-ons that we can provide customers, depending if they have various different electrified products within their home. You mentioned some other EV tariffs. We have the charge anytime tariff add-on, which is that 7p per kilowatt, and we integrate with different OEM car manufacturers and also different EV charger manufacturers. So we then can take control and we can make sure that if you want your car charged at a certain time in the morning, then we'll make sure that it's charged at that time and at that 7p rate, which I think is one of the most competitive ones in the market from what Laurence was saying a bit earlier. Then we've got our solar battery, quite a few different things. Whether it's solar battery, it's about 20p seg, and then 15p just for solar. We also have something called Battery Boost, which actually looks to offer 10p per kilowatt, where we take control of batteries and we start powering them up. So by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe you want your battery charged, we'll make sure it's full by that point, and then you can then use it in the evening. My area is that Heat Pump Plus, which is the 15p pence per kilowatt for the tariff add-on that you can use on Valent, Wiesmann and Mitsubishi Electric heat pumps. Yeah, slightly different to what's on the market. One of our key sort of mentions, and I think we spoke just before around like price rebalancing and those sorts of things. This is what price rebalancing could do if we had it for the whole country around electricity being cheaper, which is something that we're all for at OVO. But effectively, yeah, we find it's a simpler way for customers certainly to understand. It's 15p flat rate. Don't really have to do any time and schedules, where actually sometimes it's a bit more expensive in peak times if you don't get those schedules right. We just want to try and keep it fairly simple and create that adoption where I think for Heat Pump Plus, it's around 2 times from the spark gap perspective compared to sort of 4 times where you need that efficiency level. So we're really trying to make it as simple as possible for consumers. Yeah, I have a Valent heat pump here at home. Before I was saving, well, it was about cost neutral. I'm about 400% efficiency compared to my gas boiler. And then with Heat Pump Plus, save sort of £300 or so, depending on that price cap every 3 months. But I think it goes back to Peter's point around, it's going to be right for the customer. And we try and make propositions, and we're always iterating them to make sure that they are right for the customer, but try and make it as simple as possible for customers to understand and support everyone in the industry, installers as well, to make sure it's a proposition that you can get over to the customer as well to support with the electrification of heat and other products in our market.
Are you new to heat pumps and feeling lost? Then From Zero to Heat Pump Hero helps you understand, operate, and optimize your system. No jargon, just simple practical advice from one homeowner to another. Take control of your heating and save energy. Get your copy now. Link in the description.
Ben, when he was talking about the tariff that he's on, I just wanted to touch upon the setback overnight. So I don't set back my heat pump runs all the time, and every room is set at the right temperature that I want it at. People do setbacks overnight and stuff, but what I typically found when I was actually during some of the saving sessions and stuff, when I did switch stuff off, I just found that the heat pump would work extra hard again to get everything up to temperature. So I just took the view that I just run everything how we run it. Is setbacks a good idea is my question, because I don't even know I could do it with my heat pump, to be quite honest.
We recommend setbacks. It's only a tiny bit of setback, but actually what we are talking about in a way as well is that because there's cheaper electricity at night, we could actually increase the temperature by a couple of degrees rather than set it back, and allow the house to heat up and use the underfloor heating and the street as a buffer. I'm more interested in the fact that, do we actually need more heat in the morning, or do we use more heat in the afternoon? Yes, I agree that it's colder in the morning, but effectively you just get out of bed, you run around, you have a shower, and an hour later you close the door and gone to work. Do you actually need to heat up the house to a higher temperature? The next question is, do we then let it drop down for the day because nobody's home? We have to have this conversation with the customer, and they have to have the tools to be able to do these minor adjustments, not the heat pump adjustments I'm talking about, but the minor adjustments, how it actually works for their house. Otherwise, I would advocate that the heat pump is running and it's just left to do what it's doing, because it will work more efficiently at that point.
We actually just leave our heat pump running the whole time because it keeps the slab warm. It just keeps the whole house warm. It doesn't matter kind of when it is. The weather comp just does its thing. And I've seen a lot of people doing setbacks online. And because the control panels are just so incredibly stupid in terms of allowing people to try and do that simply, these guys jump through the most insane hoops to either try and increase, when the electricity is cheap, they're trying to just pump that heat pump so it just runs extra hard so it does heat up at 4 a.m. But it's really, really complicated to do that. Chris, is this something that should be a lot simpler for people to try and do if they do want to have setbacks, or they want to drop back a couple of degrees in the evenings or pick up by a couple of degrees at 4 a.m? Should it be simpler?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's probably a bit of hangover from, if you come from a boiler, inherently your boiler install is going to be in the morning, ramp up for a couple of hours, in the evening, ramp up for 4 or 5 hours, and then during the day it's either off effectively, because there's a lot of on-off controls. You'd like to think that boilers today would have an element of weather compensation that's installed as standard, and I think there is some work going on in the background with boiler installs, weather compensation, minimizing the flow temperature, so it's more of a heat pump ready flow temperature rather than the sort of 80 degrees side of things. So I think there's some work going on there, but I would definitely say that running it low and slow, the handover to the customer from an install perspective, I think that's the important part. If that setback temperature should be a lot easier. I think the Valent actual control and others, I think the Valent, the one I use, is really simple. The app is actually really straightforward to manage that. But I know that, I guess, tinkering all the time. But if I was to set that to 17 degrees and then I got back at 4 o'clock and I wanted 20 degrees, I know that it's going to cost me more, and it probably won't get there until maybe the next morning, depending on how cold it is and those sorts of things. So I try and set it a fairly comfortable sort of 19 degrees or so all the time. I find actually my efficiency stays pretty good. And over the 12-month period I looked, it was that 400% efficient. So the similar sort of to the gas price. So it was cost me no more than gas. So rather than more of a fluctuated approach to how I think boilers have been run and how a heat pump would run, I actually find, therefore, from a customer perspective, if I was to assess myself, actually I'm more comfortable with that temperature rather than this sort of a cycle approach when I have my gas boiler from a personal perspective and from members of the family, because that's what's important as well.
One thing I jump in here and say is that obviously if you go to OVO and get their tariff, like there's a lot of kind of inbuilt optimization effectively that's just going to happen for you, and you're not going to think about it. If you're not on that OVO tariff and you want something to be doing that kind of tinkering and optimization and stuff, there are some thermostats and some software products out there two that I see quite a lot. One called Homely, one called Havenwise, that do or try to do some of that kind of optimization around the tariff for you. And that's the case for some of the kind of like the tariffs that we've been talking about, but also some of the slightly kind of crazier and out there ones like kind of Octopus Agile and that kind of thing as well. So there are quite a few options out there. If someone's been struggling to control their heat pump manually themselves, I've got a Mitsubishi one, and the app for it is hideous and hasn't been updated for over 10 years. I know that that's an issue for some people, that there are options out there if someone's kind of trying to automate some of it.
So what's your strategy, Ben? Do you have any setbacks? And if you do, how have you actually managed to implement those?
I have a little kind of bug, which I've kind of chipped mine, and I can write commands and send it to it. It's called an MQTT bug. I mean, they are only 30 quid. I could write myself an app that's much better than the Mitsubishi one, I think, in about a day. Being more serious, like I just let mine turn off at 9 o'clock in the evening, and I turn it back on again at 2 or 3 in the morning, and it's always going to be warm by 7 o'clock. But I also do, and this is something I haven't mentioned, but I think it's also quite important, like hot water. Unless you're using lots of hot water at all times of the day, particularly in the winter, you might as well do your hot water overnight if that's when your cheap electricity is. When you get up in the morning, 2 of you have a shower, like by default, a lot of heat pumps will automatically just switch into trying to replenish the hot water. And you probably don't need it, unless someone else is about to have a bath. I definitely look at that setting. Hot water is not a lot. Like, it's probably going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 kilowatt hours of power in a day. But, every bit adds up, I guess.
So if somebody's watching this, Laurence, and they haven't looked into tariffs, like I'm not a very big tariff guy, what advice would you give them in terms of the tariff options that are available to them? How would you advise them to actually select the correct tariff for their particular property?
It's actually pretty complex, actually. I mean, there's dozens of different tariffs, and it kind of depends on who you are and what you do. So I guess probably the biggest determinant is, do you have a heat pump? Do you have an EV? A lot of the heat pump tariffs are great, but not all that great if you've then got an EV. The cozy tariff is great, but only 3 hours to charge your car. Well, 3 hours in the morning, in the early morning, and 3 hours in the afternoon. And then I'm a kind of set and forget kind of guy. I mean, I just want this stuff to work. And on the hot water, Ben, I tried to get my hot water to go between 11:30 at night and 5:30 in the morning, and I would miss the cutoff, and then the next day the water would actually be too cold. So now I just let the water heat whenever it wants to heat, because I never know if someone might want to come over and have a shower. So I want my water warm all the time in case I need to use it. And actually, if it costs me 3 kilowatts, I'm paying 7 pence a kilowatt if I have to pay for it. On a day like today, the sun's paying for it for me.
The thing that irritates me, speaking from my own perspective, is that the smart meter guy came to our property and said, we're going to have to rip out our kitchen cabinets in order for him to be able to get in there and put a smart meter in for ourselves. So now we don't want to do that. So now we're stuck in a situation where if I have got a Wi-Fi enabled heat pump and I am on a flat rate of, let's say, 15p if it is to be with OVO, and you guys are gathering that data from us on a half-hourly basis, on a daily basis, at a flat rate anyway, surely we should still be able to just be invoiced based on that 15p and the usage only from that heat pump.
We do have, the Mitsubishi example, it's an hourly figure. So that's I guess it's an iteration. I think by the end of 26, you're meant to have all half-hourly settlements. There's that sort of coming in, but at the moment, some of the heat pumps are hourly based. So we don't have to have that smart meter. We have to have the smart meter there to future-proof us, because I think that's where, from an industry perspective, that's where we're going. But we do read from the heat pump as well to make sure the consumption's correct. I think over the last 12 months, we've seen quite a lot of heat pump offerings, all with different opportunity, different ways of working. We just need to try and keep it simple for the customer.
So, Pete, you obviously install heat pumps. So, what are the biggest mistakes that heat pump owners make when actually choosing a tariff?
That's very interesting because a lot of heat pump owners don't even know there are different tariffs available or what they could use. So it's down to us as installers to understand the market as a whole and actually try and advise them that, okay, you've got an electric car charger, you might have solar, you might have batteries, you might have a heat pump now, but you've got to be looking at this energy management as such as on a totally different level. And we have to, as installers, we have to understand the products that we're installing and other people are installing as well. I find that a lot of times that we go out and see a customer as they're on their journey and they've had a few of the products installed already, and it's time for the heat pump, and I ask them about their solar panels, their batteries, their car chargers, their cars, and they've got absolutely no idea how they run. And they might still be on their basic rates or whatever they're called, and they haven't changed. So we then go there and actually say, okay, well, once we've got this, we can actually find out what you're using, how you're using it, and we can advise you what would be your best way of running the house going forward. And this is where we're working with Laurence together on getting the customer to understand their energy usage, being able to store the amount of electricity that they need for the certain period of the time of the day that they need it for, and then use it when the price is cheaper from the suppliers or from the solar panels. So there's a lot of that going on now, and I'm finding that we're no longer just a heat pump installation company. We are an energy management company, and we have got customers. We go back to them. It's not just a service of a boiler. It's about understanding how this whole year went and what their prices were and whether they are comfortable, so the temperatures are right, whether they are paying the right amount of electricity, whether they introduced another part to the puzzle. Usually the car comes later. All of this is part of our jobs now as installers of heat pumps.
Laurence, do you think that energy suppliers are doing enough to educate heat pump owners about maximizing efficiency and cutting their costs?
I don't actually know if it's really in the energy supplier's interest. It's like turkeys voting for Christmas, isn't it? I mean, look, at the end of the day, I think what Pete said is absolutely right. I had a call with a customer at 8:30 this morning, and she was asking me, should she fix her gas or not? And I said to her, I've no idea. I haven't used gas for the last 3 years. I don't even know what the price of gas is. But I do have somebody on my team that follows gas, so I put her onto him and she fixed it this morning. So, yeah, if you're on gas, fix. Actually, that's the part of the job I really like. I mean, we don't do 10,000 installations a year. We probably do 150. But, I know pretty much every one of our customers, but I absolutely want to retain that level of service to our customers so they can call us up if they've got a query and we can answer it with the greatest will in the world. IT is catching up with this quite quickly. I'm sure customers can just, in the future, they'll be able to press a button and it will say, right, we've scanned the market, we've looked at your usage, and this is the tariff you need to be on for the next 9 months.
Ben, do you think that we'll ever see heat as a service take off in the UK?
I think it depends on the regulation, and Chris probably knows more about it than I do. But I think one of the things that will be quite interesting in the heat pump space is the idea that people can have effectively different suppliers for different appliances within their house, meaning that you could effectively get something a bit like a mobile phone contract for a heat pump and kind of, a bit like they were doing already, like kind of have a fixed price or some kind of set of parameters and a 5-year loan or, 5-year contract when you get a heat pump that kind of guarantees rights in or puts a cap and floor on like how much you're going to be paying for the heat for that boiler, which is the kind of thing you can fix the price of renewables in a sense, in a way that you can't. Well, actually, you can with gas. You can buy a contract for 5 years, but like things like that, I think are gonna like innovations like that are gonna start to come to the market quite a lot more. I think you're going to see cars. Well, I think you already do see cars with kind of included mileage or charging with them. So yeah, I think there is going to be some innovation in that space, but yeah, it's kind of regulatory. It all kind of hinges on the kind of central settlements and IT processing systems, the smart metering, what's called the DCC, like all the infrastructure around that kind of all working, and all the suppliers agreeing on, the data processes and the flows and things like that to kind of facilitate it happening. So there have been, unfortunately, some delays recently on like the implementation of the half-hourly thing that we were talking about earlier, or when that's going to become universal, which is obviously a shame, a big disappointment to people in that space. There is still hope.
So, Chris, in terms of OVO's Heat Pump Plus tariff, is it only available now to people if you've got a Valent, Viessmann, and Ecodan? Are there other kind of manufacturers that are in the pipeline?
Yeah, so yeah, those brands, they can be installed, or they could be existing installations that can get access to the tariff add-on. So Heat Pump Plus. Obviously, we use our partners, Heat Geeks. They install heat pumps for us. They'll get access to Heat Pump Plus, or it could be a non-Heat Geek install. They can still get access to Heat Pump Plus. On the brand topic, yeah, we had a discussion yesterday around the different brands. I think there's 35 or so different brands on the or so. So it's choosing the right one, and where to focus time. We certainly have a roadmap with what that looks like. We've obviously got more to follow, but yeah, watch this space on how we can look to expand moving forward.
So, Laurence, you've spoken several times on the show about your particular setup with the batteries, the PV, and your heat pump. Could you just repeat that once again so that people can get a better understanding of how you've managed to get everything work together in order to save you costs and also have reasonable export rates on your excess electricity?
I just firmly believe in it. So I think my setup has cost me in the region of £60,000. But I'll be honest with you, that investment is staged, or has been staged, over the last 12 years. The actual benefit, I would say I'm typically getting £9,000 worth of benefit every year. So if you had £60,000 to invest and you put it to work. So I mean, we talk to people a lot of the time who I met a chap on Wednesday, £14,000 a year his electric bill is, you know. Yeah, no, but that's a target market customer for me, because I can go in there and deliver some real value. You put some decent products in 6 years' time, you'll have free electricity. You'll probably never pay an electric bill again. But you need the capital to be able to do it. I've been completely electric since 2021, but I bought an EV in 2016, and I've gradually sort of added. So I've got 18 kilowatts of solar here at the moment. I've got planning consent in for another 7 kilowatts on a carport at the front, so that'll give me 25 kilowatts peak. I've got 4 Powerwall 2s, which gives me 54 kilowatt hours of energy storage. And I've got 37 kilowatts of export permission, right? So on a good day in the summer, I can power the entire street, which is 60 houses. Now, I'm only powering the base load of the entire street. If they all started charging EVs, I would not be able to. It's entirely possible to not have an electric bill if you've got the money and the dedication to want to do it.
So, Pete, you said something quite interesting a short while ago about, you're not so much a heat pump installer anymore as an energy management kind of guy. What does the ideal future energy tariff look like to you? What would you like to see?
That's a very good question. I haven't actually thought about the future. I'm trying to manage it now. We are at the point where we are trying to explain to people what and how they should be buying electricity. Anybody has got roof space. Solar is so cheap nowadays. The battery prices are coming down to a point that it's worth having a battery. Heat pumps, in a way, once you've got 7, 10, 12p electricity, as we said, if you've got a 400% efficient heat pump, gas just doesn't make sense anymore. When the electricity is there and it's in excess, and we have got batteries that we can store it in and use it, and whether we're overheating our houses or setting them back, it's all got to work as one system. And that's what I said about the energy management. Working with solar panel installers and battery installers like Laurence and his company, us as the heat pump management guys, sorry, the heat pump installers coming in. Actually, my product is using more energy than anything else in your house. When that heat pump is on, whether it's on for hot water in the summer or whether it's on for heating in the winter and hot water, it's using more electricity than anything else combined in that property. Whatever the electricity price is, as long as it's managed and considered, it's going to be right. All the systems have got to work together. Not just having a heat pump, not just having a battery, not just having all of these components. They all have to talk to each other. Now, we have got systems available for that. We've got OEM systems that are coming out that we can just literally pick off the shelf and it will work. We've got larger overarching systems, call it a home automation system, that actually has a fantastic energy management side built in that we can work with. And I've got it and I've been playing with it, and it's fantastic what we can achieve. Again, going back, it's the customer's expectations and understanding of where the future will take us.
Ben, do you think that machine learning and or AI has a role to play going forward in terms of efficiencies and managing kind of your consumption and ultimately your costs when it comes to heating?
It can factor in at a few different phases of the process, I guess. There's kind of the decision-making phase of where, as a homeowner, you're thinking, what technologies do I want to get? How much of them? When? In what order? So the app that I've got on the web, kind of simulates different heat pump options, ground source, air source, kind of different radiator sizes, different amounts of PV on your roof. So you're going to have one roof that's kind of south-facing and probably the best, one that's not so good that's north facing. Kind of there's a sliding scale there, and then there's kind of different amounts of battery that you might kind of put on top, and the amount of battery that you probably want on a house is a function to some extent of how much heating you want and how much solar, how much good solar you can put on the roof as well. So kind of there are quite a few things to throw in there together. And there are also some kind of traps, I think, as well. We've talked quite a bit on this call about how EV tariffs are kind of really cheap, and that's true. And that's great. And I've got one myself. I can't figure out how they actually make a profit on them at the moment. I think they're kind of, some of the overnight rates on those tariffs are loss leading. And so while if you've got a battery and you're taking advantage of it today, that's great. I don't think there's necessarily a guarantee that you're going to keep getting electricity that cheaply overnight in the future. I could bore you for hours for the reason why I think that's the case, but that's part of it. I think the other thing with solar is I think a lot of people will get solar and they will kind of look at things on an annual basis, and that's what my tool does, which is helpful. But there are quite a lot of export tariffs out there at the moment that are kind of 10-15 pence a kilowatt hour, which are fantastic, but the wholesale price is more like 7 or 8 pence a kilowatt hour, and those export rates in themselves are kind of loss leading as well. There's quite a lot for people to think about, and when you're making these decisions, they're kind of 5, 10, 15 year things. The typical house that you put through my model will have a cheaper running cost, lifetime running cost, with a heat pump compared with a boiler. But the big difference is you've got to stump up some money up, or more money up front, to get that than you would for a replacement combi boiler. One thing that definitely will get cut probably soon is the grants. That's one reason to go early. Yeah, there's quite a lot for people to think about. And, Laurence was saying it's a bit of a journey. I think a lot of people will get a heat pump first and then get a battery and then get an EV, or the other order. For a lot of people, it's not it's not something that just happens overnight. It's kind of a plan over a number of years.
Are you thinking about getting a heat pump? Then don't get caught out by a bad installation. Bodge Buster is your essential guide to asking the right questions and spotting red flags before it's too late. Written from real homeowner experience, this book gives you the knowledge to avoid costly mistakes and make informed decisions. Get Bodge Buster today in print or for Kindle, link in the description. I don't keep tabs on this, Laurence, but whatever happened to the Tesla tariff?
I'm not sure how much of this I can say. So Tesla had a partnership with Octopus. So the Tesla tariff was administered by Octopus Energy. And actually, believe it or not, I was talking to a customer this morning. Can you believe that they did an 8p bi-directional tariff? Like it was like 5 years ago now. And actually, the partnership between Tesla and Octopus was a 3-year deal. Since then, obviously, Octopus have then partnered, I think, with Give Energy, and for the Intelligent Octopus Go. But now they're partnering with Tesla. I think they're going to bring that intelligent. No, is it called Intelligent Octopus Go? No, sorry, Intelligent Octopus Flux is the one I'm talking about. Do you know what? These providers, they need to name these tariffs differently because it's so bloody. I mean, I'm in the industry and I get confused with it, right? So how can a normal person that doesn't read, electrical publications every other day understand? You've got Go, Intelligent Flux. Bloody hell, man. They should just make it really, really easy. This tariff is for you if you've got an EV. If you've got an EV and a heat pump, this tariff is for you. But anyway, that's my rant over, Mars.
Plug in OVO there for charge anytime, one way.
So, Ben, the one question that we get asked quite regularly on the forums is, what's the minimum SCOP that a heat pump needs to achieve to break even with a gas boiler?
Depends on what tariff you've got. That's the short answer.
If you're on a fixed tariff, so for example, you're paying whatever the price cap actually dictates.
Well, then it's about 4 then. The conclusion of this call, I guess, is it can be a lot worse than that and you can still save money, provided you are on a sensible-ish tariff for having a heat pump. And that's not advocating having a bad SCOP or a bad heat pump at all. I think, the way of flipping that around is saying, actually, in reality, you can make quite a decent saving on certainly on your running costs, your bills each year, but also kind of, the lifetime cost of installing or replacing your boiler or installing a heat pump now, and then accumulating your bills up for the next 10, 15 years. Like, both those ways it's cheaper with a heat pump, generally speaking. You can boost that, make the most of that by picking the right tariff, I think.
The one thing that I always say to homeowners that ask us about heat pumps and renewables in general, if they can't afford anything, I always tell them to start with solar, because it goes on the roof, it just generates when it needs to. There's no thinking about trying to manipulate your heat pump to optimize and all the rest of it, because you're just generating that electricity immediately and you're saving money straight off the bat. What I like about what you said, Ben, is that we certainly didn't care that our heat pump was inefficient 4 years ago when we were paying 11p per kilowatt hour. You fast forward 4 years and we're paying, I think we've just gone up to 27 or 28p now. That makes it really, really difficult for us in order to try and justify that versus oil or whatever it is. So Chris, is this something that you guys try and communicate to your customers? If you want to go down the renewable path, get a heat pump put in, but also get a good tariff to go along with that to make that heat pump as cheap to run as possible.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we going back to customers that are ready to have a heat pump now or not ready to have a heat pump, we support both customers through, whether it's through our partnership on the installation side and our Heat Pump Plus offering, or we have a rewards platform where customers can actually bank heating, or it's a heat saver, so they can bank energy basically for when they're ready to use their heat pump or get their heat pump installed. They can then cash in that savings that they've been doing over the last couple of years to hopefully then support them with running costs. Because we know running costs, I think it's about 44% of consumers do have concerns over running costs from a heat pump install. So we know it's a high thing that people, the customers, think about. So we certainly try and make it as easy as possible. There's obviously more things I'm sure we can do to access the right areas, and just showing that there is availability of certain tariffs for electrification of heat, effectively. So through heat pumps is a really big part of that message, to say we're here to support customers and we're here to offer the right options for customers to take up.
I think if you install a heat pump and you don't have batteries, you're going to probably not be all that happy with it. I mean, maybe we're going to have a hybrid heat pump that's got a battery on it, right? Because I think, with these tariffs where you get cheap energy, I don't know much about the OVO tariffs, Chris, to be honest, but I like cozy because it means one battery and you can pretty much run the average 3-bedroom semi on a heat pump sort of. For a day. Yeah, I think if you install a heat pump and you're paying 28 pence a kilowatt, I mean, God, I would be, well, I mean, Miles, so you've got, but you haven't got the storage, Miles, right?
No.
So, God, we got to rectify that, man.
Can I jump in here? I've got batteries, got 20 kilowatt hours of them, whatever. Like, I'm like you, but you've got to bear in mind you lose 10-15% like of energy when you charge a battery and pull it out from the grid. Like, it's a bit better from solar, but that's one thing. And the second thing is that your battery's probably got 6,000 hour cycles in it. So when you add like the wear and tear of cycling it every day and the losses, like you probably kind of losing 5-6 pence per kilowatt hour. So sure, when you got 7 pence electricity overnight, charging a battery, that's what I do, makes lots of sense. When it's 10 pence against 20 or something like that, it's still worth doing, but it's not worth buying in the first place for, if you know what I mean. I think there's definitely a temptation to go trigger happy and buy lots and lots of batteries. It's what I've done. I'm guilty. But you got to kind of look at those like spreads and differences and kind of the costs of it as well. The upfront and the kind of, the depreciation, the wear and tear of it. A lot of people who are cleverer than me think that at some point in the future, we're probably going to have heat storage in our houses of some description that's probably not battery, like lithium ion or whatever, but yeah, like phase change material or a big tank of water in the garden or something.
Those things are there already, right? I mean, Caldera do a heat battery, Sunamp do the phase check, those things are there already. And actually, a hot water tank is a form of battery. I couldn't imagine paying a bill if I was paying all my energy. I mean, look, I'm using 150 kilowatts a day, man. At 28p, what is that, Miles?
I'm not the maths guy.
42 quid a day. That would make my energy bill for the month 1,200 and something pounds. I mean, that's bonkers.
Oh yeah, 150 kilowatt hours of gas is about 10 quid.
Well, yeah, but the gas is hugely calorific, isn't it? I mean, that's why I think heat pumps are so bloody good because, you heat the house I mean, I don't switch mine off at night. I just keep it running, but the house is warm all the time. Even my mum said, she said, I remember when I used to get out of the bath and I'd run across the landing into the bedroom with a towel wrapped around me because it was so bloody cold on the hallway. Now it's 24 degrees downstairs, 21 degrees upstairs. She's absolutely happy as Larry. Heat pumps are amazing. It's just that differential between the gas and the electric price has to change. Otherwise, heat pump adoption needs to be with batteries. That's my view.
If you've got any questions about heat pumps, then you need to join the Renewable Heating Hub forums. You can connect with other homeowners, share experiences, and get advice on heat pumps and renewables. Sign up today and be a part of the conversation. Link in the description. So that brings us to the end of another episode of Homeowners Q&A. A huge thank you to our guests, Laurence, Ben, Pete, and Chris, for sharing their expertise on how heat pumps impact energy tariff choices. If you're thinking about switching to a heat pump or optimizing your current setup, we hope that this episode has given you the tools to make smarter energy decisions. And a big thank you to our sponsor, Energy, for supporting this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a comment, and share it with anyone who you think might find it useful. Until next time, stay warm, stay green, stay tuned. Goodbye.